Welcome to Threaded Minds, Law and Beyond with Suhaib Zada. This podcast is your space to explore the intersections of law, business, personal growth, and modern life. I'm your host, Suhaib Zada, and this is Threaded Minds, where every thread leads to a story and every story sparks a new idea. Yameena Ansari, an immigration and refugee lawyer in Canada. Welcome, Yameena.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. As we all know, immigration law can feel a bit overwhelming or fast changing. And of course, it's very deeply personal to the person. So, on this episode, I invited Yamina to talk about a wide range of topics that would be of interest to many people. First, we're going to start with Yamina's journey into the field, and then what makes immigration law uniquely high stakes and key tips to help people avoid common mistakes in immigration law. Let's get into it. Okay, Yamina, before we begin with the whole topic of immigration law, I just have a question to you. What brought you to law and what led you specifically to into immigration law?
So I was always that little girl who was crying injustice. So I grew up with an older brother. He's 3 years older than me. And anytime he would win at something over me, even a stupid game, I would say, "That's unfair," or "That's wrong how you won." So I always had this deep sense about what fairness is, what justice is. And I think that's what compelled me to becoming a lawyer because that's the main thing lawyers fight for is for things to be fair and just. The way that I came to immigration law is actually unexpected for me. Once I became a lawyer, I had a lot of people approaching me to assist them with immigration and refugee matters. And I realized that even though I had not identified myself as an immigration refugee lawyer, other people in the market, the public, were seeing me that way. So when I decided to launch my own practice, I thought I should do an immigration refugee law because people are already coming to me with these issues.
I see that. So your journey didn't start from immigration law specifically. It started from different field, and then that led you to immigration law.
When I did my studies in law school, I focused a lot actually on environmental and Aboriginal law issues. When I came out of law school, I was working for a year in the Crown Prosecutor's office where I would prosecute people for criminal offenses. After that, I worked for an Aboriginal law firm, actually Canada's largest and arguably best Aboriginal law firm. And then I started my practice in immigration and refugee law. So it was a out of nowhere, basically. The first time I practiced immigration and refugee law was when I had my own firm.
Mhm. Speaking of immigration law, I was thinking, what do most people commonly misunderstand about Canadian immigration law?
What I'm seeing more and more is people thinking that it's quite easy to immigrate to Canada. A lot of people have this misconception that because their mom, sister, brother, uncle, aunt were able to move here so easily 5, 10, 15 years ago, that it's going to be really easy for them. And that just isn't the case anymore. It's become increasingly competitive for people to move here as we see the global instability. So, around the world, nations are becoming more economically unstable, socially unstable, politically unstable. There are more and more people who want to move to Canada. So you have increased number of people who are applying. At the same time, inside Canada, we're having our own issues and we're having a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment. So we're actually reducing the number of immigrants that we accept. So you have, on the one hand, mounting pressure globally for people to move to Canada, and on the other hand, Canada accepting less people than they ever have before. So obviously, it's becoming more and more competitive than ever to actually successfully immigrate to Canada.
And is this thing like recent or in general, moving to Canada is competitive and requires qualifications and, for example, being qualified to do certain degrees, certain practical jobs, for example?
So I think the pressure has really happened since the new Carney government came in April. So as you know, we had a new prime minister come into office in April. Many programs have been closed. The programs that are still open have more limited numbers than ever. I haven't actually seen any new programs be announced. All I've heard is that programs are being closed and the existing programs are accepting less people than ever. So I would say it's been less than a year that we have seen this extreme pressure on applicants to be the best applicant they can possibly be if they want to actually have a chance of success at immigrating to Canada.
Okay. And when we talk about the practice of immigration law, I know there are many law students in my audience, and some people who are considering what fields or even if they add this service to their general practice. My question is, how is being a trial or general practice lawyer different from being an immigration lawyer in day-to-day work, in the skills, and the activities you handle?
I think something that's distinct about immigration and refugee law is that how quickly the policies change, how quickly the new announcements come out. I don't really see this in any other area of law because immigration is often at the center of politics and policy. So anytime there's a politician that has a problem with a certain issue, they will come out with a new immigration reform. And we have to monitor a lot of different governments to stay up to date on immigration matters, right? We monitor the federal government because they come out with their own policies. Each province and territory also comes out with their own policy. And now it's even at the community level where you have certain communities who can invite immigrants. So, in terms of monitoring all of these different levels, so community, province, federal, and then they're changing their policies. It could be monthly, it could be quarterly, it could be annually. So they're changing things all the time. And that's why I do find it dangerous because there are a lot of people who add immigration to their practice as an add-on area, and I find that a bit dangerous because even though it appears to be quite simple, staying on top of all these policy changes is a full-time job.
I think this is also relevant if you have a dispute, or for example, you need to take a case to a tribunal. This is a totally different practice, in addition to, for example, filling out forms, submitting applications, right?
Yeah, so in my practice, I do the full range of immigration and refugee law. So I do solicitor work, which is submitting applications, but I also do a lot of litigation. So generally, litigation, immigration, and refugee law would be if there's an unfair refusal, which there often is. Oftentimes, people's applications are refused against the law. Or if people's applications are dragging on too long, we can also take that to court. And I'm also seeing an increase in that. As IRCC is cutting down on their number of workers, but application numbers are rising, there are very long delays in processing times. And the other times I'll see litigation is, for example, if they're trying to deport somebody from Canada, remove somebody from Canada, or refugee hearings, of course. You will also go to a hearing for that.
So I'm not quite sure, but do you think it's feasible to have an immigration service in addition to, for example, doing other aspects of the practice of the law, or you feel like with the level of updates and recent policy changes, it's better to have a specialty in that area for the benefit of clients, in your opinion?
So obviously for me, I've chosen to focus in on just immigration and refugee law because I do find there's enough going on in that area. But I do see other colleagues who practice other areas as well, and they do it really well. I think there are a few practice areas that actually lend themselves really well to being add-on areas for an immigration lawyer. For example, employment law, because there's a lot of employment-based immigration So I often think about if I was going to expand my practice, I would also probably add an employment law because I'm already assisting the employee and the employer with giving that temporary foreign worker status. So, employment law, I think if somebody has the knowledge of that or they're already practicing that, and then they want to add immigration law, I think that's a great add on area. Another area that I think lends itself really well to being combined with an immigration practice is business immigration. So, business law. Because I'm already assisting businesses in opening up branches in Canada. So, on top of that, if somebody has that grounding in business law, so they know how to incorporate companies, set up companies. I think that is also a great additional area. So I do think it is possible to combine it with other areas, and I have other colleagues who do it really well. But for me personally, I like to be an expert and I like to feel like I really know what I'm doing. So I've chosen to focus in.
Okay, that's a great point. Beyond knowing the legislation or that piece of regulation for that applicant or for that process, what does good lawyering look like in that field?
Something that I didn't really have a proper understanding of until I got into this area is how important the human touch is, emotional intelligence, trauma-informed practice. And that's something that I continue working on because I do think it's lacking a bit in our education. So going to law school, I don't think that I was sufficiently prepared to enter practice as a human being. People come to me and they tell me their deepest secrets, even things that they don't tell their own family members. So, good lawyering in immigration law is not just about knowing the law, staying up to date on policies. It's about being a safe human being, being the type of person that another individual is going to feel safe disclosing their deepest, darkest secrets to.
Um, in terms of the updates you discussed about recent changes or even the monthly updates that an immigration lawyer may receive, what kind of updates you think lawyers or even immigration lawyers need to stay on top of?
So, with immigration law specifically, of course, we stay on top of the government policy changes. And we also, of course, have to stay on top of case law. Case law obviously impacts all our cases. But the other thing is that's distinct about this area of law is operational manuals. So the immigration officers who decide on these applications actually have manuals that are provided to them by the government. And all of their decisions must be in line with the internal policy set in these manuals. And these manuals are also updated regularly. So as the government is changing their priorities, they're updating these manuals. And we read these all the time and we stay up to date on them because as lawyers, if we're familiar with what's in the manual, that's like our cheat code, right? It's like when the teacher gives you the rubric for the assignment and you tailor the assignment to the rubric. That's what immigration lawyers try to do is we read the operational manual, which is basically the rubric the officer will follow, and we tailor our application to the manual to give our clients the highest chance of success.
And is this manual publicly available?
It is publicly available. Previously, it would show up in Google very easily. So if you would Google study permit IRCC operational manual, it would show up really easily. Recently, it's actually become very, very hard to find. So some of us in the immigration bar are wondering if it's been delisted from Google, if IRCC is trying to reduce the SEO on it, but it is still publicly available. So if you type in IRCC operational manual, you'll see manuals on each program. And if somebody's submitting their own application or they're just starting in the practice area, I definitely recommend they go and read the entirety of each manual before submitting an application. It's going to give them a very high chance of success. But don't be discouraged if you don't find it on Google right away.
When we talk about the need for legal counsel or legal support, What are the signs someone should seek legal help, and what situations you think are usually safe to have it as do-it-yourself project? Fill out the application, submit it, do it yourself.
I think that there's a few signs that maybe somebody should hire a lawyer or a regulated Canadian immigration consultant over DIY. So somebody who doesn't speak English or French well, that's one of the signs that they should hire somebody to help them. Because if you're trying to read these instruction guides and fill in these forms, which are only available in English and French, and you don't have a good command of the language, you're probably setting yourself up for failure. Another demographic that commonly hires me are people who just don't have the time. So somebody who can really sit down and dedicate themselves to this process, who has a good language competency, probably will be able to figure it out, especially with the basic application. But if you're the kind of person who has a very high stakes, high performance career, plus maybe you're busy at home with kids, that's another sign maybe you should hire somebody to help you because you just maybe may not have the time to dedicate yourself properly to the process. Another sign that maybe you want to bring in an expert is something complex. So you're doing a complex filing. So for example, you're going to court, right? Normally only lawyers go to court. Or you're doing a program that is harder to get into, like the startup visa program, like a self-employed work permit. So if you are doing a program that is complex, that has a high rejection rate, that's probably another time to phone in an expert. That being said, there are a lot of programs that people apply for themselves, and they're usually successful, right? Like many people who speak English and French well, who've been in Canada for a few years, they do their own express entry applications, and they're very successful. Most people do their own PGWP applications. They're very successful. Because if you understand the language well, you have the time, you're doing a non-complex matter, you could probably do it yourself.
The issue here is that for example, some of the applications would require knowledge of the eligibility requirements for that program, whether there's even an alternative program that would benefit you and probably has a higher success rate than this program. So I think it's immigration law can be a multifaceted area where it's not always very easy and straightforward, such as postgraduates work permit, for example, if we compare it to other streams or immigration paths.
I always say that probably the most beneficial meeting somebody has with me is the first meeting, the consultation, because oftentimes people are trying to sort through this information themselves, and not all of the information is easy to find. But when you talk to a professional and they say, what about this program? Oh, do you know this program? So if people don't have a lot of money, they can't hire a lawyer to do their entire application. Even just going to the consultation and learning about your options, if you only have a few $100s to spend, spend that money. And even that guidance can take you a long way in terms of making sure you're applying to the right program or asking specific questions about, well, what are the common mistakes I could run into to avoid those?
Hmm. And when we talk about the immigration practice, as a client or someone who would like to seek support, what should I look for when I seek support in immigration? I know there is, I think it's called immigration consultant, and there are lawyers, and there are probably other titles. So how would you describe the types of practices available, and which practice or thing you should seek? What's the difference between a consultant or a lawyer in that regard?
So there are three people in Canada who are qualified to provide immigration advice. The first is a regulated paralegal. So that only exists in Ontario currently, as far as I'm aware. The second is a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. So they are regulated by CICC. And the last is a Canadian lawyer, which would be regulated by their territorial or provincial law society. The main difference between the paralegal and the consultant and the lawyer is that the lawyer can also go to court.
Mm,
So if you need to go to court down the line or you currently have a court matter, the only person you can retain is an attorney. I think a lot of
mm,
the same rules apply to hiring lawyers as apply to hiring any other professional, right? So you check their Google reviews. Do they have good Google reviews or not? You ask around with your friends and family members and you say, hey, did you have a good experience with somebody? Did you have a bad experience with somebody? And obviously now we have Google, right?
mm,
So you can go online, you can go on Google, you can see what articles this person has written. You can check their regulatory history. Have there ever been complaints made against this person? What do other people have to say about this person? So thankfully nowadays with social media and Google and the internet, we can expand our circle of knowledge beyond just friend and family referrals, but we can also find out what is the larger public saying about this individual. And at the end of the day, I think the most important factor is retain somebody that you feel comfortable with, that you want to work with. Because there's a lot of great immigration lawyers and consultants and paralegals out there, right? Google reviews will tell you, ChatGPT will tell you, their website will tell you, but there is a certain person that you're going to want to talk to because you're going to have a high intimacy relationship with this person. You're going to be emailing them, calling them, and talking to them all the time. So
mm.
you need to ensure that you also retain somebody that you feel comfortable with.
Okay. Yamina, I would like to bring a topic that will touch on probably every area of the field, which is AI, the usage of AI. I have very hard time reading some of the people, like some of the documents written by people who would use this technology. So my question is, how is technology shifting the immigration practice? And what would you respond to anyone who would say, don't hire a lawyer, actually, let's just use AI to fight this ticket I received or to fill out this form?
I'm honestly so impressed with AI. So this morning, for example, one of my staff members, she had to prepare a brief for me to so that I could learn about a certain topic that I need to know a lot about. And and I looked at it, and on the side she had her ChatGPT tab open. And I said, "Did you use ChatGPT to write it?" She said, "Yes, I did." And the brief was so good because the way that she did it is she had already done her own independent research and she had already written the whole outline of the brief herself. And then she put it into ChatGPT and she told ChatGPT, just this is the form that I want. And after ChatGPT, she also edited it. So that is the type of functionality that I think ChatGPT is great for. Is if you already know the content that you want to write and you have done the research from proper sources, and then you use ChatGPT to draft it. And her brief was excellent, but I didn't like the tone. I wanted the tone to be more formal and to be more neutral. And literally, all she needs to do now is take that brief, put it into ChatGPT, and say, change the tone, and boom, it's done. Right?
Mm,
Because back in the day, to change the tone of a brief, you're sitting there for hours, right? So I think it's about using artificial intelligence in a proper way. So not deriving the answers directly from artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence, if you look at it on the back end,
mm.
80% of the LLM models are from Reddit. I don't know if you've been on Reddit. There's lots of good information on Reddit. There's lots of bad information on Reddit because Reddit is just normal human beings talking about their opinion. Would I trust Reddit with legal advice? No, I wouldn't.
Mm.
So I do think it's a great tool when you already have the answers, but you want somebody to say the information quickly and then you also edit it afterwards. I don't think I would use it on its own because I wouldn't want a bunch of Redditors coming together to write my court pleadings for me in the same way I'm not going to let ChatGPT do that either.
Of course. And you don't want ChatGPT to do your brief and add emojis or M or N dashes, and you feel like you're writing a blog right now, right?
I do think it can be used to, create court filings, but you need to tell it what the cases are, right? ChatGPT and AI is notorious for hallucinating cases,
Yeah.
making up cases that don't exist, or for citing cases that are no longer in use. So you
Of
don't
course.
want that in your court filings, fake cases or cases that are no longer in use. And the average Canadian or individual is not going to know if these are real cases or not, or if these are hallucinated cases, or if these cases have been struck down. An expert professional, on the other hand, is supposed to stay on top of those matters.
I totally agree with you, and I think the future is uncertain for sure. But so far, with the experience we've had with AI, I don't think it can replace a lawyer, especially in high stakes cases or matters, or when accuracy is actually important, which is part of the legal practice. I was reading some cases, judges started to discipline some lawyers, and they don't accept the fact that you assign the finding of truth to even another human, even if you assign it to an assistant. So the role of a lawyer is clear and existing, can't be delegated or outsourced to just a machine.
What are you gonna tell the judge if the artificial intelligence is incorrect? You can't blame it on ChatGPT, right? If you can't blame
Yeah.
it on your assistant, you can't blame it on ChatGPT. It's got to be correct. But I'm not scared of AI. I think as lawyers, we need to stay up to date on the newest technology, on the newest trends, because if you don't adapt and evolve, you're
Mm,
gonna get left behind.
yes.
So I do think it has a place in practice, and we need to use it ethically and professionally. But it's also never going to replace the human touch, right? The main reason people come to me is not because they need help with the law. It's because they have an emotional need.
Mm.
They feel scared. They need safety. They're worried about something. And at this point in time, artificial intelligence can't give you that feeling of safety. They cannot figuratively or literally hold your hand and say, I'm here to help you, and this is going to be okay. It doesn't have that functionality.
It's a
So,
predictive tool. It just predicts what comes after that text based on the materials.
yeah, and it's very helpful, but for people who work in human-centered fields, and especially if you have a human-focused practice, I don't think it's going to be able to replace that touch.
Yamina, just my last question, and hopefully that will be accepted. In immigration law, what's your favorite book that you go over and over from time to time and you find it useful? I know this is can be a business secret, but it's just a book you like in immigration law or something you go to it over and over.
So I do have the textbook in admissibility and remedies. It's written by Raj Sharma and his co-author. But I do go back to that book a lot because I do have a lot of people who come and approach me for complex matters. So complex matter where they're technically ineligible for that program, or they have been found inadmissible to Canada. They're trying to be removed. People who have committed crimes or been accused of committing crimes, people who are accused or have committed human rights offenses, people who have medical issues. So those type of complex cases are very, very detailed and tough to manage in terms of legislation and regulation. So I go back to that textbook a lot.
Okay. Yamina, thank you so much for making this so clear
Thank
for
you.
everyone. Before we go, how can people find you? What's the best method that they can reach out to you using it? And do you actually also help clients outside of Canada?
Of course, we assist clients globally and inside Canada. So you can find us on the web, ansarilaw.ca, ansarilaw.ca. You can also call, text message, or WhatsApp us at 1-647-494-8299, or you can email us, immigrate@ansarilaw.ca.
Thank you for tuning in to Threaded Minds, Law and Beyond. I hope today's episode offered valuable insights and inspired new ideas. Stay part of the conversation by following us on Instagram and sharing your thoughts. We always appreciate hearing from you. Remember to leave a review and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcast, so you never miss an episode. Join me next time as we continue exploring the threads that connect law, business, and life. Until then, this is Suhaib Zada. See you on Threaded Minds.